now that we are nourished in body, let us continue to nourish ourselves in the mind. We'll start with a talk by Beth Sutton-Ramspeck, who will be speaking to us with a talk titled "The Ministry Has Fallen, Voldemort's Policies and Project 2025." So let's welcome Beth to the podium.
Thank you, and good morning, and thank you, Mitchell, for taking over. I am still in no mental space to do even as straightforward a thing as moderating a panel, so thank you to everybody. So, as the PowerPoint shows, as the PowerPoint shows, the title of my paper is "The Ministry has Fallen, Voldemort's Policies and Project 2025." So unless you read only the Daily Prophet, you've probably heard of Project 2025, also called Mandate for Leadership, the Conservative Project, a 900-page publication of the right-wing Heritage Foundation. Project 2025 contains plans for the 2025 presidential transition if Donald Trump is elected. The plan entails a complete overhaul of the federal government. After negative publicity, the Heritage Foundation president, Kevin Roberts, stepped down. Is Project 2025 therefore dead? To quote Hagrid, codswallop. Now, there is also, I should tell you, an alternative thing from the official transition project. It's called American First Policy Institute Transition Project, and it's not as well publicized because I guess they learned their lesson. But from everything that I can see from the little bit that I've looked at, it's essentially the same thing. So while Trump has publicly disavowed the project, the Heritage Foundation does have deep ties to his presidency, providing a staffing pipeline for his administration. Moreover, according to a CNN analysis, at least 140 people who worked in the Trump administration had a direct hand in writing Project 2025, including 6 of Trump's cabinet secretaries, his first deputy chief of staff, 4 people Trump nominated as ambassadors, and several enforcers of his controversial immigration crackdown. That is, according to one calculation, 78% of its contributors. One of Project 2025's authors, Russell Vogt, said secretly in recorded footage that Trump privately blessed the work and is very supportive. Vogt served in Trump's administration, helped write the formal 2024 Republican platform, and is rumored to be under consideration for chief of staff in a second Trump administration. Oh, let's hope not. History tells us that Trump will follow the document's advice. In 2016, ahead of Trump's first term, the Heritage Foundation released the 7th edition of Mandate for Leadership, and related to Brent's presentation yesterday, the first Mandate for Leadership from the Heritage Foundation was written for the Reagan administration. So it's an ongoing project. And 1 year into his presidency, he who shall not be named, the other one, had embraced 64% of its policy recommendations. So, not dead. Here we are. So, what does this have to do with the world of Harry Potter? You won't be surprised to know that I am going to argue plenty. To be sure, it's not possible to show direct parallels between the Potterverse and some widely publicized aspects of Project 2025. For example, there's nothing in the Potter series about outlawing abortion, denying climate change, delaying the retirement age, or eliminating overtime. However, Project 2025, as a blueprint for reforming government, echoes changes to the Ministry of Magic under Voldemort in 5 ways. Completely overhauling staffing, and thus the mission of government programs, undermining the criminal justice system, encouraging racist policies, undermining education, and undermining what we in America would describe as First Amendment freedoms. This paper will focus on the Ministry of Magic in Book 7 after it's fallen. So, When Lupin visits the trio at number 12 Grimmauld Place, and Hermione asks whether those who raided Bill and Fleur's wedding were Death Eaters or ministry people, Lupin replies, a mixture. But to all intents and purposes, they're the same thing now. He explains what you've got to realize is that the Death Eaters have got the full might of the ministry on their side now. Similarly, the core of Project 2025 is replacing career civil servants with people loyal to the former guy. As one chapter of the mandate puts it, personnel is policy. According to Don Moynihan of Georgetown University, the idea of purging the ideologically suspect extends to career civil servants as an entire class. Mandate for Leadership enshrines something called Schedule F, a policy instigated late in the first Trump presidency that allows career civil servants to be fired and replaced at the will of a president. And that was thrown out with the Biden administration, not surprisingly. This strategy ignores that these employees are recruited on the basis of merit, and they are charged with upholding the law as written and overseen by Congress. Under Schedule F, anyone with a policy-making role can be included based solely on their politics. Perhaps 50,000 government employees could be reclassified as political appointees. These new bureaucrats could carry out everything else in Project 2025. That is precisely what is at work after the fall of the Ministry of Magic, when department heads loyal to Voldemort use blood purity, which could be seen as a stand-in for ideological purity, to threaten others' employment. An example is Yaxley, the Death Eater who bullies Ron when he is disguised as Reg Cattermole. Having a Muggle-born wife has nothing to do with Reg's competence at magical maintenance, but Yaxley uses it to threaten Ron and Reg, both, whatever. Ron as Reg. If my wife were accused of being a mudblood, said Yaxley, not that any woman I married would ever be mistaken for such filth, and the head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement needed a job doing, I would make it my priority to do that job, Cattermole. Similarly, Albert Runcorn, the ministry official Harry impersonates, supervises investigating Muggleborns. Runcorn has ousted Dirk Cresswell, not for incompetence. In the Goblin Liaison Office, Arthur Weasley tells Runcorn, Harry, that Cresswell is 10 times the wizard you are. No, Cresswell is fired for being Muggleborn, which opens his position for another corrupt bureaucrat. Meanwhile, Arthur Weasley himself is among many pureblood wizards whose security status is, quote, tracked. All movements are being monitored. Arthur's file in Umbridge's office describes him as pureblood, but with unacceptable pro-Muggle leanings. Known member of the Order of the Phoenix. Arthur is in danger of losing his ministry job because, quote, blood traders are as bad as mudbloods. This, inarguably, is about Arthur's opinions and loyalty to the government's leader. Much of the greatest alarm about Project 2025 justifiably concerns its impact on the Department of Justice. Under Schedule F, the personnel thing I told you about, Justice Department prosecutors can be fired for being disloyal, not to the Constitution, but to Trump. According to Professor Moynihan, quote, Trump and his appointees object to the idea that the Department of Justice should have enough independence to credibly investigate him. Mandate for Leadership also rebuts the idea of DOJ independence. Furthermore, failure to follow the president's agenda should result in disciplinary action. And if the president's agenda is to protect the president from the consequences of his crimes or use the DOJ to spearhead his efforts, say, to overturn an election, so be it. Moreover, Trump has repeatedly threatened to send the DOJ after his political enemies, whom he calls the enemy within. And that's kind of most of us. Okay. Project 2025 also calls for federal prosecutors to circumvent local district attorneys and to charge people for crimes when local prosecutors do not. Reproductive rights could receive this kind of aggressive federal enforcement. Drug crimes are huge areas of criminal law where federal prosecutors could have a marked impact on mass incarceration by pursuing more cases and seeking longer sentences. Conversely, the DOJ would discontinue investigations into systemic police misconduct. To be sure, one could argue, like Susan Hall, that throughout the Harry Potter series, the wizard world is not governed by the rule of law. In Deathly Hallows, the Voldemort-controlled ministry deploys its already problematic judicial system, and you know what I'm talking about. But they make it worse by allowing magical law enforcement to deploy mercenaries called snatchers to round up their supposed enemies, in part by responding to the taboo on Voldemort's name, pursuing people for their opinions, because, quote, it was only people who were serious about standing up to him, like Dumbledore, who ever used it, who ever dared use it. Thus, it is a quick and easy way to find Order of the Phoenix members, the resistance to Voldemort. And by the way, and I'll probably run over, there was just a story a couple of days ago that ICE is training civilians to surveil immigrants and giving them practice at target shooting of people. Okay, nearly every Harry Potter fan understands that wizard responses to Muggles and Muggleborns represent what we Muggles call racism. Thus, what the Snatchers do, seeking not just political opponents but also Muggleborns, resembles immigration policies based on assumptions about people of color. Under Umbridge's Muggleborn Registration Commission, Muggleborns are stripped of their wands, applying the same logic as Clause 3 of the Code of Wand Use. No non-human creature is permitted to carry or use a wand. Muggleborns are reduced to non-human creatures, automatically guilty of a crime, and sent to Azkaban, equating the other to animals or vermin, another Trump trope, is a standard policy of racists and fascists. So depressing. Oh my God. Good morning. Under Project 2025, ICE will step up, quote, enforcing civil immigration regulations, including the civil arrest, detention, and removal of immigration violators without warrant, where appropriate. Project 2025 proposes preventing U.S. citizens from qualifying for housing subsidies if they live with someone who is a non-citizen. Mass deportation now is a catchphrase for the Trump presidential campaign, a policy that could affect 15 to 20 million people, whether directly or indirectly, families. Of course, deporting British Muggleborns would obviously be a problem, which is why Muggleborn witches and wizards are sent to Azkaban. Similarly, Project 2025 recommends imprisoning suspected undocumented immigrants. Indeed, detention would become mandatory. Quote, Congress, and this is all from Project 2025, Congress should eliminate ambiguous discretionary language in Title VIII that aliens may be detained and clarify that aliens shall be detained. As with U.S. Immigration, Ministry of Magic policy separates parents and children, the Cattermole family being one instance. Project 2025 repeatedly targets all policies favoring diversity and inclusion, which self-evidently will lessen diversity and inclusion in all government and civilian offices. But there's more. To quote the section about the Department of the Treasury, participation in any critical race theory or a DEI initiative is per se grounds for termination of employment. It is not enough to end efforts to facilitate diversity, equity, and inclusion, anyone who participated in them in the past shall be exposed and fired. It's like all of us. Similar employment proposals are described throughout the document. Like there are all these different chapters, and all of them have something about DEI. Just about all. This is yet another instance of the analogous view that blood traders are as bad as mudbloods. Hogwarts admission criteria always had problems, excluding magical species like goblins, centaurs, and house elves, and squibs who might excel in herbology, potions, muggle studies, or care of magical creatures. Under Voldemort, that exclusion extends to muggleborns. In the past, Muggle studies was an elective and severely flawed, but under Voldemort, Electo Caro teaches Muggle studies, which is compulsory for everyone. This is a quote. "We've all got to listen to her explain how Muggles are like animals, stupid and dirty, and how the natural order is being re-established." Yay. Not surprisingly, Project 2025 not only dismantles DEI and what little critical race theory actually occurs in schools at all academic levels, it also alarmingly ends efforts towards merely fair treatment of students of color. Project 2025 advocates not questioning schools where students of color continue to experience harsher disciplinary measures such as detentions, suspensions, and expulsions at higher rates than white students. Project 2025, with some astonishing doublespeak, advocates that as a matter of civil rights, federal government should eliminate, quote, affirmative discrimination in all aspects of its operations. Oh, no. With Muggleborns excluded from Hogwarts, one might imagine that race-based discrimination would cease there, but Neville reports that they don't want to spill too much pure blood, so they'll torture us a bit if we're mouthy, but they won't actually kill us. A consideration obviously not extended to Muggleborns. Okay, and this stuff. Censorship. Book banning is so central to Project 2025 that it appears in the book's foreword, page 4 and 5. The primary target is so-called pornography, meaning, quote, the omnipresent propagation of transgender ideology and sexualization of children. In the words of Kevin Roberts, the editor, the former head of Heritage Foundation, quote, educators and public librarians who purvey this pornography should be classed as registered sex offenders. People who produce and distribute it should be imprisoned because they are child predators. Librarians. It should be noted that Roberts condemns this pornography aside woke progressivism, and proposes that, quote, the noxious tenets of critical race theory and gender ideology should be, and this is, critical race theory is in quotation, gender ideologies in quotation marks, should be excised from curricula in every public school in the country. While the document mentions no titles, a reasonable guess is that they include the most challenged books of recent years, and this slide shows the most challenged books of 2023. So much, obviously, for parental control, unless you're those parents. Little imagination is required to recall Dolores Umbridge's textbook and Educational Decree number 27. Any student found in possession of the magazine The Quibbler will be expelled. And under Voldemort, school censorship goes even further. Consider the murdered Muggle Studies professor Charity Burbage, whose supplanted curriculum Voldemort describes with language of filth, contamination, and Nazi propaganda. Voldemort says, not content with corrupting and polluting the minds of wizarding children, last week Professor Burbage wrote an impassioned defense of mudbloods in the Daily Prophet. Wizards, she says, must accept these thieves of their knowledge and magic. Words like corrupting and polluting echo Project 2025's calling woke ideology noxious and poison. Project 2025 threatens freedom of information more broadly. In hidden camera footage, Project 2025 contributor Russell Vogt revealed a secret playbook for the transition to a second Trump administration, including pre-written executive orders and guidance to use law enforcement and the military against protesters. To keep the plans secret, not that they're very secret, but to keep the plans secret, they are to be disseminated among loyalists on private email prior to the inauguration so they won't have to converse over government work emails, which means journalists and the public cannot request information about them through a Freedom of Information Act request, though I guess that's one of the many things they'll throw out anyway, so why does it matter, right? Similarly, now here we go. Similarly, in the wizarding world, most people don't realize what's happened at the ministry because Lupin explains the coup has been smooth and virtually silent, kept out of the Daily Prophet. As a result, people are scared to speak out. Oh, dear. I'm very close to being done. Okay, well, and the questions can go shorter. Donald Trump repeatedly advocates retribution against journalists whose reports he dislikes, including imprisonment, and Project 2025 advocates defunding NPR and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting as leftist opinion. While this does not rise to the level of, quote, Death Eaters have taken over the Daily Prophet, Roxana Munster of the Brookings Institution notes that the authors also suggest the next administration should reconsider whether journalists should even be granted space at the White House grounds. This plan would encourage an administration to grant access only to journalists who favor its agenda, Rita Skeeter, not those who will question or push back. So, what would Dumbledore's army do? According to the Wizarding World site, the Minister of Magic is democratically elected, though there have been times of crisis in which the post has simply been offered to an individual without public vote. Albus Dumbledore has made such an offer and turned it down repeatedly. Abandoning democracy anytime a purported crisis occurs seems a precarious way to maintain a stable and fair government. Timothy Snyder in On Tyranny quotes the Federalist Papers, where annual elections end, tyranny begins. The warning is apt, and I won't bother you with this because you're familiar with it, right? He said, get out and vote now because you won't have to after the election. Perhaps Trump was joking, though he has about as much sense of humor as Cornelius Fudge, or he who shall not be named. Either way, Project 2025 codifies plans and policies embraced by Trump and those he will point to positions of power. Most of the Harry Potter series, especially the last 3 volumes, concerns how the Order of the Phoenix and Dumbledore's army resist such policies. They collaborate with one another to strategize, organize, and recruit. They speak up and share accurate information in the face of censorship. Confronting worse challenges than our own at present, they break the rules, they spy, burgle, use a couple of unforgivable curses, and battle to the death. Their most extreme methods might have been avoided had the Ministry of Magic not been permeated by policies of an unelected government. That is not going to work. But anyway, they didn't have the opportunity to vote. So if nothing else, childless cat ladies and others, perfect. If nothing else, vote. Here's my works cited, available on request, and a magical Dumbledore's Army site where you can sign up to knock on doors, make phone calls. Please do something if you can, especially if you live in a swing state. Thank you.